අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First Night, this Wednesday the 26th of April 2023. Interrelation. Government aims to achieve debt sustainability by reducing public debt by 2032. New competition. Sinopec and RM Park Shell to ink agreements mid-May on retail fuel sales in Sri Lanka. War zone evacuations. 13 Sri Lankans living in Sudan were successfully evacuated this morning.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. In your top story for tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe called on the parliamentarians to approve the IMF agreement since there is no active option for Sri Lanka to stabilize its economy. Delivering a special statement during the parliamentary debate on the IMF Extended Fund Facility Agreement reached with the International Monetary Fund, President Wickremesinghe highlighted the importance of debt restructuring and added that the government aims to achieve debt sustainability by bringing down public debt below 95% of GDP by 2032. While expressing optimism about Sri Lanka's future, the head of state also urged the nation to work together towards a brighter future.
මේ ගිවිසුම නිසා අපිට IMF එකෙන් මං ඩොලර් බිලියන 3ක් විතර ඊළඟ අවුරුදු 4 ලැබෙනවා. ඒත් ඒ වගේම අනික් ආයතනෙත් මුළු ප්‍රමාණය ගත්තොත් මේ අපිට බිලියන 7ක් විතර ලබා ගන්නට පුළුවන්. ඒකම මේකේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් දැනටම පේනවා. විදේශ බැංකු මූල්‍ය ආයතන විශ්වාසය අපි ආපහු ලබාගෙන තියෙනවා. දැනටම ආර්ථික ස්ථාවරභාවය ඇති වීගෙන යනවා. සමාජ ආරක්ෂණයට වැඩි මුදලක් ලැබෙනවා. ආයෝජකයන් ලංකාව දිහා බලනවා. ඉතින් 16 වතාවක් IMF ගිවිසුම් ට පැමිණලා අපි සම්පූර්ණයෙන් ක්‍රියා කරේ නැහැ. 17 වෙනි අවස්ථාවේදී තාවර කර පදනමක් එනකොට අපේ දීර්ඝකාලීන දුර්වලකම් නැති කළා අලුත් වැඩසටහනකට යන්න තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේ මේ අවස්ථාවේදී එයා කියලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට දේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම පිළිබඳත් ඒ ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරන්න කියලා. දැන්ට අන්තිම තීරණ අරගෙන නැහැ. ඒත් මේ ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරනකොට අපි තීරණ ගන්න ඕනේ. සමහර බැංකු කියනවා මේකට මූණ දෙන්න බෑ කියලා. මම කියන්නේ එහෙනම් තමන් බාර අරගෙන මේ ආර්ථිකය ගෙනියන්න කියලා. කොටස් වෙළඳ පොලේ කියනවා කොටස් වෙළඳ පොල කඩාවැටෙනවා කියලා. කඩාවැටුනොත් මම ඒක වහන්න. එච්චරයි තියෙන්නේ. මේගොල්ලෝ ඇවිල්ලා දැන් කියන්න බෑ මේක හැදලා එනකොට මේ කොන්දේසි ඒ කොන්දේසි ඒව බෑ. අපි මෙතන තීරණය කළා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට තීරණය කළා අපි කියන්න මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕන කියලා. මේකේ තිබුණා මේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් මම දැක්ක අද අහලා තියෙනවා අර්ථ සාහිත්‍ය අරමුදල ගැන. මම කියන්න කැමතියි සමාජිකයන්ට අපි හානියක් කරන්න ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ආරම්භ කරේ. අපි දැන් මේ සාකච්ඡා පටන් ගන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඒ පටන් ගන්නේ පැරිස් ක්ලබ් ඉන්දියාව එක්ක ඒකාබද්ධව සාකච්ඡාව එක වේදිකාවක කියන්නේ one platform චීන එක්ක වෙනම කරන්ට යන්නේ. අපිට පියවර ගණනාවක් අරගන්න තිබෙනවා. Proposed quantitative performance criteria and the indicative targets. Central government primary balance 2022 minus 895 billion. By end December we want to make it minus 209 billion. The net official international reserves US dollars million 3 billion 540,000 minus. By end December we want it to be minus 1 billion 592,000. Central government tax revenue flow 2022 it was 1,751,000. End March was 650 billion. The tax revenue finally the target for the end of the year is 2.9 billion. Then I would like to tell you the structural benchmarks required for macroeconomic adjustment. Parliamentary approval for a new Central Bank Act, which will table in Parliament next month. Completion of assets quality review component of bank diagnostic exercise for the 2 largest state-owned banks and the 3 largest private sector banks. Cabinet approval of a comprehensive strategy to restructure the balance sheet of CEB, CPC, Sri Lankan Airlines and the RDA in June. Cabinet approval of revenue measures to support fiscal consolidation during 2024 in July. Publication of report of an IMF-led governance diagnostic technical assistance mission to assess Sri Lanka's anti-corruption framework in September. Submission to Parliament for the first reading of the 2024 appropriation bill in October. Parliamentary approval of the 2024 appropriation bill and the spending allocations in line with program parameters in December 2023. Submission to Parliament of a new public finance management law that will authorize the budget formulation process, roles and responsibilities of relevant agencies and information and accountability requirements in December 2023. Improve the bulk supply transaction account to accurately measure the electricity subsidy and start using it to determine the cost recovery based electricity tariff and government transfer requirements in December 2024. Parliament approval of full revision of the Banking Act in December 2023. Set retail fuel prices to their cost recovery levels with monthly formula based adjustments and compensate CPC for providing any fuel subsidies with on-budget transfers. Continuous. Adjust the end-use electric traffic tariff schedule to its cost recovery with semi-annual formula-based adjustments on a forward-looking basis in January and July each year. Again, it is put down as continuous. Achieving debt sustainability. Debt stock. Public debt should decline to below 95% of GDP by 2032. Program financing gaps, debt service reductions during 23 to 27 should be sufficient to close external financing gaps. Under staff's baseline scenario, US $17 billion in debt service reduction is required, including the arrears accumulated in 2022. So we are trying to get a 17 billion debt reduction on that side. Do we want it or not? Are we going in for debt restructuring? We can't manage without debt restructuring. IMF ගිවිසුම හැර වෙන විකල්පයක් අපිට අද නැහැ. කවුරුත් එකක් යෝජනා කළත් නැහැ. ක්‍රියාකාරී විකල්පයක් නැත්නම් අපිට තියෙන්නේ මේක අනුමත කිරීම. අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙලා මේක සම්මත කරමු කියලා මම කියන්න කැමතියි.
Now, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Vijayasekara held discussions with a team of officials from Sinopec and RM Parks Shell. During both discussions, it had been discussed to sign agreements with both parties in mid-May, with Sinopec agreeing to commence operations 46 days after signing the agreement and RM Parks Shell deciding to commence operations from the first week of June. A team of Sinopec officials and technical experts visited Sri Lanka to finalize the agreements and commence operations for retail fuel sales, and took part in a discussion with Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Vijayasekara at the Ministry of Power and Energy. A timeline, conditions on the agreement and the dates of signing agreements were discussed at the ministry yesterday. It was discussed to sign the agreements by mid-May and commence operations 45 days from signing. In the meantime, the Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Vijayasekara held an online meeting with RM Parks Shell to discuss agreements, policy logistics and timeline for commencement of operations in Sri Lanka. During discussions with officials, it had been decided to set a date in mid-May to sign agreements and commence operations by the first week of June. Technical officials from RM Parks Shell had visited the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited. Following the visit, the officials had offered to upgrade the berthing facilities of the CPSTL to be in line with international standards and safety requirements. Now, the first group of 13 Sri Lankans living in the Republic of Sudan was successfully evacuated this morning with the assistance of the Saudi Arabian government. The evacuated batch was received by Sri Lanka's Acting Consul General in Jeddah upon their arrival. According to Sri Lanka's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 12 Sri Lankans are in the port Sudan awaiting evacuation, and added that they will be evacuated soon. The ministry said that Sri Lanka continues to monitor the evolving security situation in Sudan and are closely working with its international partners, including India and Saudi Arabia, to evacuate the stranded Sri Lankans.
A US-brokered ceasefire in Sudan appears to be partially holding. However, the United Nations say there is no sign the warring factions are ready to seriously negotiate a lasting peace. The 3-day ceasefire has largely held in the capital Khartoum, although scattered clashes persisted elsewhere in the country. According to foreign media, gunfire and explosions could also be heard after nightfall in Omdurman, one of Khartoum's sister cities on the Nile River, where the army used drones to target rapid support forces' positions. Security fears were compounded when the World Health Organization warned of a huge biological risk after fighters occupied a Khartoum laboratory holding samples of cholera, measles, polio and other infectious diseases. According to UN agencies, fighting has killed at least 459 people and wounded more than 4,000 across Africa's third biggest country. In this backdrop, evacuations continue and the first Turkish civilians in Sudan left today, with more than 100 people arriving by plane at Istanbul airport. Several more flights were expected later to evacuate the remaining Turkish citizens crossing to Ethiopia from Sudan. Britain has evacuated more than 200 of its citizens from Sudan on 3 flights from an airfield north to the capital. The Saudi military has evacuated 2,148 people, including over 2,000 foreigners. With regard to the evacuation of Sri Lankans, Ministry of Foreign Affairs said 13 Sri Lankans were evacuated with the assistance of the Saudi government. The ministry also said 12 more Sri Lankans are in Port Sudan awaiting for evacuation. According to Minister of Foreign Affairs President's Council Ali Sabri, 41 Sri Lankans are currently in Sudan and said necessary steps will be taken to evacuate them. The foreign minister said Sri Lanka continues to monitor the evolving security situation in Sudan and are closely working with its international partners including India and Saudi Arabia to evacuate the stranded Sri Lankans. The Embassy of Sri Lanka in Cairo and Sri Lanka's Honorary Consul in Khartoum are in regular contact with the relevant parties in Khartoum, including the Sudanese authorities and the Indian Embassy in Khartoum, to secure safe evacuation.
Now, Japan will be providing 1.3 billion rupees to Sri Lanka through Japan's International Cooperation Agency to strengthen infectious waste management in government hospitals. The project aims to strengthen infectious waste management by installing medical waste incinerators in selected public hospitals, thereby contributing to the reduction of health hazards. The signing of exchange notes pertaining to the provision of a project support of Japanese yen 503 million, which is approximately 1.3 billion rupees through Japan International Cooperation Agency to strengthen infectious waste management in government hospitals in Sri Lanka was carried out today. The project aims to strengthen infectious waste management by installing medical waste incinerators in selected public hospitals, thereby contributing to the reduction of health hazards. In order to achieve the above purpose, 15 hospitals has been selected for the installation of incinerators covering all the provinces in Sri Lanka. A total of 15 incinerators will be provided in 2 capacities, with LP gas burners, automatic temperature control systems, and compliance with the environment standards on the project, and also the necessary technical guidance to the Ministry of Health as a soft component of the project for training of trainers to maintain the system after the installation of equipment under the project. The relevant exchange notes related to the grant was signed by Treasury Mahinda Sirivardana and Japanese Ambassador to Colombo Mizukoshi Hideaki. The grant agreement was signed between Treasury Secretary Mahinda Sirivardana and Chief Representative of JICA office in Sri Lanka, Yamada Tetsuya, at the Ministry of Finance. Now, the Fort Magistrates Court told the police officials to carry out the investigations on the case regarding President Maithripala Sirisena's illegal transfer of ownership of 3 elephants that were under the custody of the Wildlife Department during his tenure as president, properly without blaming the lack of evidence on negligence. The Fort Magistrate urged the police to do this after they told the court that they were unable to obtain a statement from the former president and the former additional secretary to the president, Kingsley Fernando, as the original files regarding the matter had been reported as misplaced.
The Fort Magistrate Court today considered the case filed regarding the illegal transfer of 3 elephants that was under the custody of the Wildlife Department to an outside party based on an order given by former President Maithripala Sirisena during his presidency. The Special Investigation Division of the police, who appeared before the court, stated that they had obtained a statement from the former president in accordance with an order previously obtained from the court in relation to this legal act. However, the former president has said that he cannot give a statement regarding the relevant incident without consulting the original file. The Police Special Investigation Division said they had obtained a statement from the former Additional Secretary to the President, Kingsley Fernando, who said that he could not give a statement without checking the original files. However, the Police Special Investigation Division said that the former Additional Secretary to the President has stated that the original file is not currently in the Presidential Secretariat and it has been misplaced. Fort Magistrate Thilna Gamage has ordered the investigation officers to formally investigate the case and report the facts to the court without saying that there are no original files.
And we'll be back with more news right after this short commercial break.
ඉඩමට පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. මේ අලුත් අවුරුද්දේ හිත පිරෙන ගනුදෙනුවකට හොඳම තැන හිත ගිය තැන බැංකුව HNB.
ලාභ ඉපයීම් සහ කොටස්කරුවන් සඳහා ප්‍රතිලාභ වසරින් වසර ඉහළට 2022දී රුපියල් බිලියන 23.6ක බදු පෙරලාභයක්. ශ්‍රී ලංකා ඉන්ෂුරන්ස්.
Welcome back. The Sri Lankan shares closed low today, dragged by industrial stocks. The all-share price index fell 0.37% to 9,091.72, marking 8 straight sessions of losses. The S&P SL20 index ended at 2,646.48, following a loss of 0.39%. Expo Lanka Holdings and CT Holdings PLC were the top decliners on the CSE all-share index, down by 0.94% and 7.2% respectively. Trading volume for the CSE all-share index fell 34.1 million shares from 61.3 million in the previous session. The market turnover fell 740.5 million shares or $2.31 million from 1.14 billion rupees in the previous session. The capital goods sector in the meantime was the top contributor to the market turnover, while consumer services sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers in the equity market, purchasing stocks worth 144.4 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 697.1 million rupees. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now oil prices slipped today, extending sharp losses from the previous session, even after reports show that US inventories fell last week as the market took stock of weak US data that raised fears of recession in the world's biggest economy. Brent crude fell by $1.31 to $79.46 a barrel by 13:35 GMT, breaking below the $80 mark for the first time since March 31st. US West Texas Intermediate crude fell 99 cents to $76.08. Oil prices have erased all their gains since the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and producer allies such as Russia announced in early April an additional output reduction until the end of the year. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak said on Wednesday that OPEC Plus remains an efficient tool for coordination on global oil markets. Oil prices dived more than 2% yesterday amid lingering economic concerns and expectations of further interest rate hikes that could curtail fuel demand growth and countering signs of improving short-term consumption gains. US consumer confidence dropped to a 9-month low in April as worries about the future mounted, heightening the risk of economy falling into recession this year. Investors also showed concern that potential interest rate hikes by inflation-fighting central banks could slow economic growth and dent energy demand in the United States, Britain and the European Union. The US Federal Reserve, the Bank of England and the European Central Bank are all expected to raise rates at their coming meetings. The Fed meets over the 2nd and 3rd of May. A report showing a fall in US oil stocks limited losses, however, especially on WTI. US crude oil stocks fell by about 6.1 million barrels in the first week ended April 21st, according to market sources citing American Petroleum Institute figures yesterday. Analysts had expected crude inventories to fall by about 1.5 million barrels. Gasoline inventories fell by 1.9 million barrels last week, while distillate inventories rose by 1.7 million barrels, the sources said. Official stockpiles data from the US government is due today. US crude oil stockpiles have been falling since the middle of March as refineries have increased runs or produced more gasoline ahead of the peak summer demand period that starts in May. This has pushed WTI futures prices into backwardation when prompt futures are higher than later dated futures, reflecting the higher refinery demand. Now, the tech-heavy Nasdaq advanced today as strong Microsoft results offset concerning over-rising interest rates and the effect on the US economy, while an upbeat forecast from Boeing further boosted sentiment. Microsoft Corporations claimed 7% after it beat estimates for quarterly results and said that artificial intelligence products were stimulating sales, pushing information technology stocks more than 1% higher. Earnings forecasts have improved, with analysts expecting a 3.9% contraction in the first quarter profit for S&P 500 companies compared with a 5.2% decline estimated at the beginning of the earnings season. Of the 124 S&P 500 companies that reported first quarter profit through Tuesday, 79% topped analyst expectations. In a typical quarter, 66% companies beat estimates. A report from yesterday showed US consumer confidence dropped to a 9-month low in April, signaling that the economy could fall into recession this year. Investors are keenly awaiting the Federal Reserve's monetary policy decision on the 3rd of May for clues on how far policymakers will hike interest rates. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Tune into our social media pages to stay updated on the very latest. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.